So, my dear ones, we continue in this month to feel that connection between us all and in all of life, that connection that is undeniable and that connection that can never be broken. Because what connects us is our commonality. What connects us is our essence. What connects us is the truth of us, the grace of us, the power within us that is godly. That's what connects us. And this is what is going to be realized by each and every single one of us, regardless of what appearances are, regardless of how ugly things seem to be, or regardless of how divisive and separate and tense and agitated and even angry and more. Doesn't matter. It's there, it's present. We can't deny it. We feel it, we experience it. But it's not the truth. And it's not what's going to hold ground. It cannot hold ground. Only the truth can hold ground. And in history, over and over and over again, whenever the non-truth rises up and tries to empower life and living, in comes the truth that breaks it right into smithereens and establishes itself once more as the unity and the harmony and the peace that is ours to realize and experience. That's what's going on right now. So fear not, I say. Fear not. And today we're endeavoring to look at what building bridges is all about. And do we not sing the songs in our communities of spirituality? Love will build the bridge between you and I. Love will build that bridge. Don't you know it's time? Don't you know it's time? It's time, and it's happening. All over the world, there are many clusters of lights gathering together, building bridges, building bridges, building bridges, but you're not going to hear about them. They're just not sensational enough. They're just not what the mass wants to be absolutely engaged in and in awe of, sensationalism. You see, my dear ones, there is no power other than the one. So there is no thing that can topple that power, overcome that power, or diminish that power in any way, no matter what. We have seen it over and over again with empires rising and empires falling, dictators being dethroned, and so on and so forth. It's just not our way. It's not the way of true humanity to live like this, or to be engaged at that level, or to be in any way put down, kept down. It doesn't happen. Sooner or later, we rise up. We rise up. We come to ourselves like the prodigal did, and we go home to the Father, which is truth, which is life, which is light, which is love. And then all we ever desired is ours, because we are builders. We're not destroyers. It's in our nature, our spiritual DNA, to build, to advance, to uplift, to add to, not to tear down, not to destroy. No. And we talked about this wonderful thing called forgiveness. I mean, let's put it very simply. Forgiveness serves me more than anybody else. Because what it does when I forgive and truly forgive, it frees me from that psychological umbilical cord that attaches me to that which I will not forgive. That's what happens. And I'm in that power. I'm under that thumb. I am not free to be in self-control. I have handed over my control to another. And forgiveness is potent and powerful and strong. And it's able to say, I forgive it. I forgive him. I forgive her. I forgive them. Father, forgive them. Why? Because they haven't got a clue what they're doing. And that's what gets us into trouble. We forget who we are, and we haven't got a clue with regard to what the power of mind is, what the power of feeling is, what the power of action is, what the power of being is. And that really bodes very, very, very badly for us, because life is a boomerang. It goes out there, and sooner or later, it comes right back to us, increased in either negativity or affirmation, one or the other. As they say in the Hindu scriptures, the tree grows the way you sow it. The tree will only grow the way you sow it. I know that because when the tree in my garden was planted, it was left to be at an angle. And then too late, they tried to straighten it. It wouldn't straighten. It was growing the way it was growing, and that's that. The roots had taken on its own course, and that's it. So forgiveness is just the bread and butter stuff of spiritual life. We forgive. I happen to be very fond of Anthony de Mello. Now, he is a tough nut, I have to say. He doesn't hold anything back, and he socks it to you. I mean, he really does. He just boxes your ears and slaps you up the side of the head, and he says, you want to be a grown-up, do you? Well, you got to be able to take this. So if we want to be spiritual grown-ups, and he reminds us of this, it's so very, I laughed when I read it. He said, the great Saint Teresa at one time said how grateful she was because she no longer self-identified, meaning ego-identified. She could identify with her I, the I am, the observer, the witness, and so on. And others like Meister Eckhart and so on, all the mystics, they get to that point where they do that. And he says, as far as getting upset and as far as getting offended and as far as taking everything personally, they're way beyond that, because what do they know? They know I'm an ass, you're an ass, so what? Because that's how we behave ourselves and conduct ourselves when we're asleep. We're asses. Can you imagine? We are sovereign royal asses, and we are sovereignly and royally on our high horses of self-righteousness at times as an ass. It's an ass that's riding the horses. I laughed heartily. At first I thought, do I want to get offended or do I want to see how funny this is? And then I roared laughing because I thought, gosh, the man has a point. Because at the end of the day, every single one of us are wrong at times. Every single one of us make mistakes at times. And so we can't act as though we're holier than thou, because we're all in the commonality of the egoic human experience as well as the spiritual human experience. So the next time any one of us wants to get on a high horse, let's remember what Anthony de Mello says. We're all asses. I mean, really, we're braying all over the place. Don't you find it? I hope you find it funny, because to me it's hilarious, and it lightened me up, I have to say, and it prevents us from taking ourselves too seriously. But Anthony de Mello also went on to say he was a wonderful Jesuit theologian and psychologist, and he shared with us the great wisdom of one of the Chinese great sages, and he didn't name who it was. And he said, this is what the man shared with us, that an archer, when he is in his field and he's with his bow and his arrow and he has his target there, and he's just enjoying being the archer, he is all-powerful, and his aim is always straight and hits the target. But when he is playing for a brass belt, he gets nervous. And when he then is playing for something of gold, he completely loses his mind. He sees two targets, and he does not have the power and the skill available to him that he had when he was just enjoying his art for no particular reason. And so he says, it was the prize, the winning, that divided his mind. It was to do with winning and losing that divided his mind. And I just thought that was the most powerful thing that I'd read in a while. Adam's ale, very good for you. That's what we call it in Ireland, water. And so when Hector, my little frog, visits me, don't worry, that's all it is. It's just Hector getting up on my shoulder again and keeping me humble. And so I find that that was a great sharing. And it's very simple in its direction as far as understanding how we don't do the best that we can do. Because when we're into winning and when we're into losing, we've lost our skill and we've lost our power. We've disempowered ourselves. And we're randomly then in the game of life. And when you play randomly, it's dangerous. And so you and I remember, my dear ones, we must remember that that's what happens on planet Earth. There are many ways that we get distracted. There are many ways that we're mesmerized. There are many ways that take our attention away from what is true and what is real and what is whole and what works the best for everyone. And we really are endeavoring to work our best for everyone. You see, it's not all about me. I mean the egoic me. It's not all about the egoic me. It never was and it never will be. It's all about the I in all of us, the I am in all of us. And it would do us very good to be like the little boy, the 2-year-old, that shouts out, "Charlie's eaten all his dinner, Charlie's eaten all his dinner, Charlie's eaten all his dinner." Charlie has become the observer and the witness of himself. And he sees he has accomplished something wonderful. He's eaten all his dinner. Well, you and I have to be like Charlie at times. We have to be the observer and ask ourselves, did Moira eat all her dinner, etc., or not? And be that, that detached from it. It was the archer's attachment to the outcome, his attachment to winning, that took away from him his concentration, depleted his skills and his power, you see. So it's that detachment which is the ability to step back and observe and look without the ego getting all tangled up in it all. Because again, the ego is beautiful when it's in check and when it's in balance, nothing better. But it's rarely that in the world, in the busyness of the embodiment, because it's always frightened and always afraid. And what do all the great ones say? Fear not, do not be afraid, fear not, do not be afraid, because the I within you is stronger than the me of you. The I that you are is much more potent and powerful than the me that you think you are, the person that you think you are. And when you look out into the world, you can't help but see, the dualistic world that we live in. It's a beautiful example. It's a terrible, awesome beauty, this example of how dichotomized we are, how separate we are, how divisional we are, how we have dissociated ourselves from each other in such a potent way. It's such a classic example of it all. And we learn this as a very small child, in our own homes, in our own schools, in our own gathering places, how others are different. And those who are different from us must be avoided and not hung out with or played with or whatever as a small child, because they're different. That's all we know. They're different. How are they different? They don't live like us, and they don't eat like us, and they don't look the same as us. So they're different, you see. And we have come to understand different as being not very good at all. We have thought about difference as something that's a negative rather than a positive. And we need to stop this nonsense now and grow up spiritually and be what we say we are, spiritual beings. I mean, all of us who are engaged in spiritual communities need to show up as we say we believe, to show up embracing the principles of these spiritual communities, which to me I've discovered are always affirmative, always inclusive, always blessing, always wanting the good for everything and everyone. And so here, that's the thing about it. When you commit yourself to being a spiritual being, people expect you to be what you commit yourself to be and what you say you believe. And very often what we say we believe doesn't show up in the way we live our lives. So it's time now to get very simple about it all and either make up your mind, I am in this for the duration, or I'm out of it altogether, because you can't just dabble in spirituality. You can't just pop in and pop out. That doesn't work for anyone. It really does not. So my dear ones, please, please understand that when you decide at some time that you are a spiritual being and that you do want to spiritually unfold, remember the story of the student and the teacher when the student seeks out the best teacher in the land and eventually finds him down by a river, and he says, well, what is your question? And he says, well, I want to know how to self-realize. I want to know how to be my spiritual essence and my spiritual self. I want to awaken. And he says, oh, the master just beckoned him into the river, shoved his head under the river, kept him down as long as he could before he drowned, and then let him up. And he says, tell me, what were you wanting when you were under the water? To breathe, he said. He said, how much did you want to breathe? He said, with all of my power and strength. Well, he said, that's what it takes in order for you to self-realize, to want it with all of your power and all of your strength and think nothing else. That's it. That's what you want. And when you're in that state, my son, you will be awakened. And that's what it takes. Do you see? It takes that kind of a commitment. It's not something you play around with. I'm into today, or I'm into when I'm in my spiritual practice, whichever one it is. And then for the rest of the time, have at it. Be the ass that we all are, according to Mello. Oh, with all due respects to asses, I love donkeys, I really do. They're not like that, really, but you know what, it's just an illustration. And they do bray. And I remember as a small child being kicked by an ass, by a donkey, because I was trying to get up on its back, you see. And he was out in the fields. He was a field donkey. I don't know. He was on my uncle's farm. But he looked so cute and lovely, and I thought I could jump up on his back and ride him, but he had other ideas. And so I'm telling you, my dear ones, you can do this and I can do this, but only when we're doing this together, when we help each other out, when we realize, look, we're all going to make mistakes, we're all going to get it wrong at times, and that shouldn't be held against us if we're in an endeavor to do better each time, if we want to do better each time. Why wouldn't we give each other that kind of leeway and that kind of help? It's what we would expect others to do for us. Well, we have to do for others what we expect others to do for us. So stand tall, be strong, feel what you're feeling. It's an authentic and genuine feeling. Feel it, but then release it and let it go, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, and know that you're not any of that. I am more than this, and what I am is enough. It's sufficient. It is that sovereignty. It is that power. It is that presence of the one within me. That's what and who I am. Charlie needs to know this. You need to know this. I need to know this. I'm not all of that stuff out there. I am a spirit wanted me to be its own image and likeness. So, my dear ones, I'm going to leave you with knowing what we always need to know, that you and I and all individuals are points of light through which the infinite desires, wants to, and can very easily demonstrate itself, poured itself through in all of its magnificence, but you and I have to open the outlet and let that flow out. And I'm knowing each and every one of us can, because I am. You see, I can because I am, and that's true for you too. So keep your energy high, keep your mind open, keep your eye on the prize, and never deviate from knowing the truth that sets you free, the true essence of your being and what and who you are. So we leave it at that for now.